Hey, everybody. Hope you're having a great end of May. God, who can believe it? Summer is here. And all we have is thunderstorms and big hail. So we've been dodging the hail for the last 2 weeks. Time to get your car in that covered parking lot now. So what we wanted to do was kind of a loaded hour. We're going to let Miss Danielle Davenport, who many of you know, talk about her residual land value and some of the techniques and stuff that she does with it. Then we're going to talk about seismic reports for finding water, kind of a new technology that we've been using here. It's very, very impressive. So we want to go over that. And then my son, Grant here, who many of y'all have not met, he's our wastewater savant here in Austin. He's going to talk about wastewater reuse, which is a really new technology, but it really is an incredible thing to see. So we'll end the last 15 minutes of the hour doing that. So Danielle, you're up.
I know, everybody, you cannot wait to talk about wastewater, so you have to sit through me before you get to the real good stuff. And are we talking gray water or are we talking sewage? I don't know. I will find out more. Everybody stay tuned. How exciting. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well. And Richard and Joe asked me to come in and just talk about residual land value. And feel free to ask any questions or just jump in. And I don't want to be pejorative by any means, because a lot of you are seasoned, you understand this stuff, but I'm just focused on being as informative as possible so that we start from the basics and then go through maybe a complicated spreadsheet that I have that I can share with everybody. And it can be used and put in your toolkit if you're ever working with developers or trying to assess residual land value as you're doing that. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I am out here in California where land is plentiful, but not developable. And so we have something like 76 local serving agencies in California that have a say in what you do with the land. So for us to get through an entitlement project, it's usually about 3 years. Some of the processes have been ministerial and streamlined through some of the new legislation. But at the end of the day, it's hard work out here. I think I might move to Texas and my life will be a lot easier. So Joe, watch out, I'm coming. Anyway, okay. So I was gonna just talk briefly about what it is, using it, the importance of residual land value, calculating it, what's GDV and TDC. I'm gonna share with you some development spreadsheets. And then those are some of the things I can share with you after that you can take away and put into your toolbox. And then if we have some time, I'm going to talk about another example and then a little bit about risks and mitigation strategies. And the thing about residual land value, it's really a no-brainer. All of you can get all of this. It makes so much sense. It's so easy to calculate. It's just really the variables that you put into your spreadsheet to come up with the values. And what do those different things look like? In California, we have impact fees, we have habitat agency fees. I mean, all of these different things per door that you have to factor in. And therefore, that is why the price of our homes are so high. So what is residual land value? It's a method used to determine the value of development land. A lot of you know, I'm going to admit some people here, guys. A lot of you know that raw land is really hard to price out, especially if it's in the sphere of influence or if it's in the city limits. Then you're really trying to figure out highest and best based on density, what the city's going to allow, all of that. So we want to look at the development related costs, what it's going to take to get it to highest and best, including, all the profit and all of those other values. And then you put that into the spreadsheet, and that's where you come up with your residual land value. What is it, or why use it? Many times developers are really just struggling to figure out how to price land, what to pay for it. And I always say to my sellers that at the end of the day, I'm gonna go out unpriced most likely on some of their development parcels because the developers are gonna tell us what it's worth. We can put a price on it, but without knowing all of the nuances of developing in that municipality and all of the impact fees and those different things, it's really the developer that's gonna dictate what it's worth because they're gonna do the underwriting, the analysis, and come back with that residual value, what they can pay for it to make their small 8% profit or whatever it happens to be. So why do we use it? I use it when I'm working with developers. I'm not necessarily using it when I'm listing a property. I actually just got into contract on 26 acres of prime development land personally, and I'm using this for my own personal analysis. I want to understand what the ultimate lot price will go for if I do the entitlement process. And I've come out with an analysis that they're going to be 90,000 per lot. And I'm able to fit 51 lots on there. So just doing that math briefly, I paid 2.2. I do a little bit of work. What it's going to take me to get entitlements, it's going to be worth 4.5 after I get some of the entitlements done. That's a basic entitlement residual value. That's not the full development and going horizontal and vertical. How to calculate. So basically, you back into residual land value by looking at your gross development value minus your development costs. So pretty darn straightforward. Calculating residual land values, complex task. They talk about future revenues, expenses, risks, and you have to waterfall some of your expenses and maybe your phases that you're going to ultimately do your retail sales. But there's a lot of different variables that go in. And again, that'll be on the spreadsheet and you'll be able to look at that and I'll give you a general idea. And if anyone wants, I give you that spreadsheet. If you have any ideas or questions about how to use it, feel free to contact me after the fact. A quick example here, just so you can kind of wrap your mind around it real quick. If you're planning to build a residential property, it has a GDV of 10, which is your gross development value, what you're ultimately retail going to sell it for. And then your total development cost is 7, then the residual land value is 3. However, I always factor in what's the profit margin that particular developer is going to want to see, right? And so, sure, your total cost of development is 7, the land's 3, you're gonna sell it for 10, where's the profit? You're gonna have to bake in some profit there. And if it can only sell for 10, then the only variable and lever you have is to reduce that 3 million. Because your development costs are pretty damn fixed. And they're not just fixed, they're actually going up year over year by 8%. So even targeting that, you have to put that into your pro forma and your projections. I'm not sure, Joe or Richard, in Texas, what are your development costs going up by year over year?
Oh, geez, it's really hard, Danielle, and I say that because the last 3 years have been surreal. You know, because of cost, product cost, some of the labor cost, it's, I would say easily almost 8 to 10% a year. Easy.
Yeah. And then you have your supply chain issues, which can extend the duration. So then you're going to have to factor that in. Yeah, it's a challenge. So what is gross development value? That's the total value of a project once it's been finished, stabilized, and sold. So that's the retail. This is where the residual land value is determined. Estimating the gross development value requires, a complete thorough market analysis, projections, what the market may be doing in the future, etc. One of the big things that we're dealing with here in California is that we have below market rate requirements. The state has mandated that every municipality creates a housing element. The housing element has identified surplus land in addition to how many low income and moderate income housing is going to go into each development. Here's one of our biggest challenges. Let's say I've got Meritage, and they're gonna go out and they ultimately have priced out a project, and I'm just gonna use these values again. It's very small, but 10 million is what they're ultimately gonna sell all those sites for. But now all of a sudden the municipality says 20% has to be low income. Now they've just lost 20%. They have to give away that land and give that land to a low income developer that knows how to get grants and funding. So now they're having to reduce their footprint by 20%. And so that's just putting a big, so to speak, a spanner in the works for a lot of developers figuring out how to make these things pencil. At the end of the day, they may be in contract to buy that lot for 7 million. And now the new law passed, they have to go back because the only place that they can pull money out of is that residual land value. And they have to go back to that seller and retrade them and say, I'm sorry, we have to go down by 20%. So then you'll see 600,000 come off that purchase price just because of the low income housing requirements that we're getting hit with. And that's the hardest conversation I'm having with my sellers. They're like, what? Why all of a sudden are they coming back and saying they'll only pay me 2.3 when they said 3? And I have to explain how this low income requirement comes into effect. So a lot of different factors here in California that I have to think about and work on when I'm working with my sellers and buyers. The total development cost, everyone conceptually gets this. There's just different little things you need to think about based on your area and some of the costs associated with build out in your areas. But TDC is all your construction costs, your engineering fees, developer fees. We also include impact fees in there, and you're going to have to do, I'm not sure how intense it is in other states, but we have to do a phase 1, phase 2, CEQA, soil testing, stability testing for earthquakes. All of that goes into this. And then you're also, if you're going to do the retail, so I work with several types of buyers. One would be the Meritage Homes that's going to take the raw land through entitlements and ultimately break ground and sell the retail product. Or I'm working with the paper flippers, which are the people that are just taking that raw land, entitling it, getting the tentative map approved, and then we go off and we sell that to a KB Homes or somebody else that only wants to buy fully entitled, ready, shovel-ready land. So, so kind of breaking down that residual land value based on who my target buyer is a little bit different, because I could just be talking about entitlement costs here. And then also you're going to want to add in some contingency funds for the construction cost. And Joe just mentioned 8 to 10%. So I would be comfortable putting 10% in there. And then also it's kind of your rollout. What does the phase sale look like? So you're going to have to factor that in as well. I have a land development model here that I want to share with you. Is there any questions while I'm trying to pull this up?
No, but one of the questions I had, Danielle, I noticed that you were talking about the impact fees, which makes logical sense. If I'm a builder, say I'm a residential builder, and I know I'm going to have to pay a sewer and a water tap fee, I would think that number's not in there because as the builder, I'm going to pay that later.
Right, right.
Okay, just checking.
So I was curious, Danielle, the comments you made are a little more on the discussion on when you kind of set seller expectations about the potential impact on sales price. Because to me, when I'm trying to talk about highest and best use of a raw piece of dirt, we talk about how different uses get different prices. I talk with that with my prospective clients, but it also seems like I don't know if it certainly would gauge on what I think my client can grasp technically, but it seems like it's a reasonable thing to show them what I mean by that. In other words, effectively they any developer is going to do a residual land value based on their intended use. But how, help me understand what you say is to when you introduce this to a seller.
Yeah, and it really depends, right? And I don't mean to throw out terms, but we get retraded a lot here. And what I mean by that is in the entitlement contract, the PSA, there's usually they have an initial due diligence, then they'll have a secondary due diligence and a third due diligence. And any points in that process, they're going to go hard with money, different stage gates and different amounts. And at any point, they're willing to walk away too. And so even though we get into a contract and the developer says, I'm gonna pay 10 million and I know I can get 50 lots on there. At any stage, even though they've gone hard with 500,000 or a million, they're gonna come back to that seller and they're gonna say, listen, we just got smacked with 20% having to be low income, and therefore we need to lower our price by X. And so then I would bring out the spreadsheet or something very cursory that illustrates how that low income impact is going to affect their land value. Depends on, of course, I guess I hope I'm answering your question, that it really depends on the savviness, the phase of the cycle that we're in, what the potential delta is in the price, all of that as to how much information I'm going to share with my seller to make sure to
Okay.
get them on board. And sometimes I have to go through that once or twice, and contracts will fail because they think, unfortunately, the seller thinks it's being done to them until they go through this once or twice, and then they realize, no, this is just really business and numbers. You know, and I've had to get out of several contracts. And now I'm like in the fourth contract with one seller, and she finally now gets it that it's really just about the numbers. It's not about that they're trying to take her for a ride or squeeze her for every penny. And so unfortunately, it's a huge learning curve for a lot
Yeah.
of my sellers, because most of them are ag, right? Most of them have inherited, or it was a ranch, or they don't understand these details and nuances, and they assume people are out to get them. And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, the developers just need their 7-8% profit, and everything else is, projections.
Yeah.
With that, did I answer your question, or did I just do
No,
it
that's good. It's
dance?
like you said, it's very challenging to know when to introduce it, and it's easy to get over their head, particularly if the more familiar you give us something on any aspect of sales. So I appreciate your comments. I just was curious what your exposure was. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky one. So I wanted to share this spreadsheet. It's very basic. I've added some of my other areas in here for other projects, but you basically have your land costs with your due diligence, your closing costs, etc. These are your horizontal hard costs. And when we talk horizontal, we're talking about curb, street and gutter. Is that what you would refer to horizontal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, basically, well, I mean, we have water, wastewater, streets, dry utilities, primarily, stormwater detention,
Yeah.
and fire mitigation. That's our categories.
Yeah, all the infrastructure set up,
Right.
getting ready for the vertical. And then you have your vertical costs here, which is now you're starting to break ground, you're starting to build. And then your soft costs are the other things you want to add in here, which is, of course, what I talked about: the architecture, engineering, entitlement costs, taxes, any management, development fees, environmental impact fees. Now, if you're just a paper flipper, this is what you're worried about, because you're just going to buy that wrong land, entitle it, and turn around and give it to somebody else. And then you have to have your carrying costs. What does your capital stack look like? What are your costs for all of that? your sources of capital, cash flow. And then it's just essentially, but I have some different pad sales if you're doing a retail or something of that nature. Project level cash flow and returns, levered cash flow, partnership structure. How at the end of the day is this going to get distributed once you do your sale, your final sale? We do, sometimes we do profit participation with some of my sellers, which is kind of interesting. I like that model where they may say on the final phase that if they're going to get over X after their build value, they'll pay the seller, 8% or something, which is nice. And sometimes they negotiate that in so that the seller realizes that if we go into a final phase and that's 4 years out, of course, you think 4 years out, and if there's a year-over-year increase of 9, 10, 11% in land and house values, then they're going to be making a much bigger profit on phase 4, right? So why not let the seller profit in that as well? So
It's
sometimes
also
I
a way to
negotiate
help.
that in.
If I can break in, Daniel, it's also a way to help put the deal together. If the developer says, look, I can only pay you, $8 a foot to make this work, but I could sweeten the pot for you if you'll come in and we do it on the back end.
Exactly, exactly. And sometimes that's the only way to get it done. I've even negotiated where the seller gets the first right of refusal on a model home.
Yeah.
Because they're being displaced, whatever it takes to put that deal together, I'm going to do it. On the right side of this spreadsheet, I've got these assumptions, and this is more of a waterfall for some of the assumptions that you can plug in here. And this has got all kinds of different calculations and things in here. So I will send this out so everyone can play with it and blow their minds with it a little bit if they're interested. That's all the underwriting that goes into residual land value. You can get a summary from this spreadsheet, which I like. So what you enter in is ultimately going to be displayed here in this summary. You're going to get a summary of your, the equity, the project size, everything that comes out. And then you're going to get the carrying costs and everything in your levered cash flow visualization here at the bottom. I love this spreadsheet. So it's a really, really good tool. If, let's just say, even for any of you that are thinking, I saw that lot and it looks like I could buy it and I could put a fourplex on it. Use this for your own personal investment in activities because it really makes you be very rigorous in terms of, really not underestimating how much it's going to cost.
Yeah.
Some people forget those carrying costs. They forget all of that other stuff.
Yeah, some people look at the 10% contingency and go, let's make that 5%.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no, definitely.
No.
So conservative is good here. So I will send that out if anybody's interested. I'll send it to our admin here on the phone and we can share that. I'm not sure how I'm doing for time. So I told you I needed about a half an hour. Is there any questions?
Anybody have any
No.
questions for Danielle?
Yes, I do have a question. Hi, my name is Anu. I am here in Fort Worth. I just started commercial. It's been over 6 months. I do have several land listings, and some of them they are in a countryside. And I have one which is in Irving here. So a lot of people they they ask me, is there any flood zoning, and what are the requirements or restrictions? I do try to call the city and get information as much as I can, but a lot of time it's lost because not all the agents they do commercials, and I have a little bit of hard time. So in that case, as agent or broker, when I have a land listing, what are the first steps that I need to go? What type of research about the property I need to do?
Well, I can jump in, Joe or Richard, but at the end of the day, you're gonna wanna look at all the environmental and biotic constraints. And then I go directly to the strategic plan and the general plan and understand what the current use is versus the future potential use. And then I go into the Muni code, and then I understand what exactly, you know, setbacks are and density and all of those other things, so that if you have a 2-acre lot in Fort Worth, and you go in and you find that it's a 8 DU, which means a density unit per acre, you're like, score, we can put 16 units in here. So now you're gonna price it, as long as there's no flood zone or any other biotic or environmental constraint, you're gonna price it for highest and best, which is a 16-unit apartment complex or condo. So you have to get really good at understanding Muni code.
Unicodes. How do I learn from this?
It's all published
It's published.
in the city, in the municipality.
You're,
So
you're
the
gonna
general
start with,
plan, I'm sorry, Joe.
no, I was just gonna say, you're gonna start with the planning and development department for the municipal area that has control of the land that you're looking at. So if you're in Irving, I will go out on a limb here and say, you're probably gonna go talk to the city of Irving and ask them for, how do I get access to the subdivision and development code information? And that's where I would start. That's gonna give you a lot of information in terms of, if it's gonna get developed, what you need to be doing. And what you're looking to do is a basic feasibility analysis. Richard, aren't there some, with urban, development, don't they have some really good, feasibility forms?
Well,
The ULI
the Urban
Institute?
Land Institute,
Yeah, ULI.
they may, but what I was going to suggest, particularly when you're new to the business, when you make that first call into the planning and zoning group of any city, I would just ask them, particularly if you don't have help in a local commercial group, ask them who are good land use consultants, and go and develop relationships with land use consultants, because they know that you can be a source of business for them, not just for your own practice, but as you're dealing with other clients. Because when a outside developer comes and contacts you, they're going to want to know who you know that has dealt with the city of Irving or whatever. And Irving has also, or every city will have their favorite guys they like to deal with. So you can get a lot of mileage from those guys that would not mind probably in mentoring you a little bit, in hopes of getting both your business and other business. I mean,
And
Danielle, you got
I
thoughts on it?
always look at what's been published, right? So you go to the city and see what plans have been published, and they'll have the land use or any architects on there, and you go find the ones that their names keep popping up, and those are the go-tos.
So every
Right.
city, just about every city now has online all of their permitted projects. And you literally can see the full set of plans, construction plans and everything. And a lot of municipalities, and to Daniel's point, all the contact architectural and civil guys are all right there on the sheets. So yeah, great suggestion as
Yes,
well.
I did call the city and they sent me email about all the restrictions, uses and future planning. But I was so unaware about like, what are those codes? You know, they had a lot of codes and I was like, I don't even know about these codes. So as you said, I have to make a relationship with the land use consultant and learn from them. And the other one, how do I learn about the codings, like all the codes about these commercial?
Talking about zoning, the zoning classifications.
Yes, sir.
Typically in the zoning ordinance, they're going to describe each of those codes and what they mean and what uses can be done inside a specific zoning category.
Okay.
So I would tell you, if you get a hold of the zoning code for Irving, it's gonna be there.
Okay, okay.
That
Thank
should
you.
be
Thank,
included in their zoning ordinance.
okay, I'll do more research on it. Thank you so much.
The other recommendation I would make, Anu, is that you're in a KW office there in Irvine,
No, in Fort Worth.
Fort
Fort
Worth,
Worth.
Texas.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, we've got commercial agents there in Fort Worth that can probably sit down and help you get some of these questions answered. I guarantee you,
Yes, sir.
because you're gonna wanna make a connection with a local commercial agent up there. Certainly in Dallas, we've got them all over the place. But I imagine in the Fort Worth office, we've got some commercial people who can help steer you a little bit, especially if your
Okay.
background is not commercial.
No. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
All
Perfect.
right, Danielle. Good job.
I'm,
And
I'm
have a
we'll,
just gonna,
question.
oh, yeah.
I have a question. Danielle, thank you so much for your presentation. You mentioned that out there in California, you have about 76 different organizations that you have to go through for entitlements. And I recognize that every place is different. Is there, is it, I'm looking for a way to be able to identify all of the regulatory of all of the places that you need to go to. Say if you're in Georgia or if you're in Texas, I need to know all of the organizations that I would have to go through in order to get something entitled. Is that in the subdivision regulations for each of the cities or the counties, or is there some other place to find it?
For me in California, it's just over time I've realized all of this. So if you're within a mile of the coast, you have to go through the Coastal Commission, right? So these are things I've learned over time, that there's just different commissions and entities that are involved based on where or what type of land it is. If it's agricultural, you have to go through LAFCO. So I think that's just kind of something that you learn over time. I wish I could say there was somewhere you could go to. I really don't know.
Okay,
But I
thank you.
the one thing I do want to mention is that the more you can, as if you want to do this as a role or represent clients, the more you can get better at understanding zoning regulations, land use, any sort of constraints and issues, the more value you're going to bring to your clients. Because I don't know how many times I've had buyers and sellers come to me and say, you make our job easy. Other people just forward OMs to us. They just forward listings. And I'm diving into the codes to understand exactly what they can do. And that's why they come back. So if you can get your minds wrapped around all of those nuances, you're going to be invaluable to your clients. So I'm going to wrap it up because I want to hear about wastewater so bad. So with that being said, there's a lot of risks to the residual land value approach. I'll share this slide deck as well. You can look at it. Some of the different things you can do to mitigate that risk is just conduct, of course, a thorough market research, comprehensive cost model, really looking at your projections, and regularly update your calculations. So these aren't static, right? You're going to constantly want to update it because, like I said, all of a sudden municipality adds new requirements that can blow any profit margin out of the water. So I'm going to wrap it up. I'm hoping this was useful. I'm more than happy to do any of these sorts of talks anytime, but I want to hand it over to hear more about wastewater.
here we go. Thanks, Danielle. Okay, let me see if I can scare. Stops. No, I don't want stops. Oh, I want to tell me what I want to do here. Hang on.
I'm going to unshare, but I think you just take either your share button and grab what you have on your screen.
Okay, so this is not on my screen. Well, let's do the water first, which was down on my nav board. Go to my nav board. There you go, right there. Okay, cool. Okay, can everybody see the screen? What we wanted to do was, in fact, Grant, I'll let you run with this because you were out there doing the seismology report.
Well, as many of you are aware, we are starting to experience, especially if you're in the southwest regions of the United States, we've got a lot of water demand and not let's call it a dwindling water supply. In Texas, we rely on a lot of surface groundwater and reservoirs to provide a lot of the water for our municipalities, and the growth that we've had in the past 4 years has been incredible. And it's only, growing. And so that demand for water is growing as well. And what we're seeing is that municipalities are having a really, really hard time keeping up. Water companies have given us 3 to 5 year outlooks. I think I had $45 million worth of deals killed in the last 2 years solely because water just wasn't there. And these utilities can't always keep up. What we have noticed is that traditional hydrology with people who are drilling wells, they're looking at previous wells in the area, and then you may have a client that then goes and spends the money on 3 different test wells, and they could all come up with nothing. And we had to kind of go look for a new technology with one of our partners who we work with in wastewater, recommended these guys. And this technology is not new. It's been used in the petroleum engineering industry for close to 30 years now. They just didn't really ever use it to source water. They just needed to know where the water was, so they weren't drilling straight into it. What we were able to do, we have a 252-acre parcel in Liberty Hill, Texas, which is just north. Just north of Austin. And we pulled in these guys to do this seismoelectric survey. And they did 24 soundings across our property. And what that ends up looking like, and they give you the GPS coordinates, but they're able to find a rough estimate of the maximum depth of the aquifer at the base, and then what they determine the yield of that, the GPM yield could be. In Texas, you need about 100 gallons per minute to have a municipal well, that a municipality that's like, okay, this is functional. If you do a private well that's still a public water system, it can be less than that. But what we found on our property, where we were told by just off the cuff from the city water and also another well driller, that we wouldn't have water. Well, we then pulled in the seismic sounding guys, and it looks like, and as Joe highlighted here, we've actually got 3 high performing spots that, if you consider, this is almost like we're sighting in the rifle. This is going to make our development dollars that we spend on test well worth it, because we're not going to come up with dirt. There is water in these locations, and when we drill, we will find water. Now, whether that water is fresh or briny or sulfuric, we won't know until we drill. But according to the well drillers who we've talked to, who started to use this technology and bring in these guys, they're pretty accurate. They'd say about 75% on the low end of capacity. So if we've got 100 to 180, we would expect there to be about 85 to probably 150 gallons per minute in that location, which is extremely substantial.
That's for us, that would mean we literally could go to small lot development because we'd have enough water for that. So this is a way of spending the money up front rather than drilling the well and wondering if we're going to get water. This is a way of seismology, using it. And what they're looking is the depth of the aquifer, where the water is. So we did 24 soundings here. And this, of course, is fabulous. We can get a well that's above 100 gallons per minute. That's massive to us. And we spent how much?
We spent about $10,000.
$10,000 just to give you guys an idea to do the 24 soundings. What they do is they'll give you, it's about a 20-page report that we got back. And in Texas, we're able to go to the Texas Water Development Board database. And they first let you know what a lot of the owners around you have been yielding when they drilled. And of course, if you look at the gallons per minute here, this isn't bad, but it's not a lot. You'd have to build storage and fairly good size capacity to make a 33 gallon per minute well do anything. And what they do is, here was the map. Here's why they did their soundings. And then just to give you an idea of the breakdown, here's how they didn't break it down in this area. And in this case, this one's kind of the mother lode K, which is, which one? 9G right there. What they're saying is, if we go drill there, there's a very, very good chance we're going to get somewhere between 100 and 180 gallons a minute. And in that case, for us, we would turn this into a public commercial well. And then this one was also another one, 14, which looks like it might be between 70 and 130. Frankly, we just wanted to share this technology with you guys, because in a lot of cases, many of you are drilling for the water. So in our estimation, we bought this land for about $8 million. Certainly it's residential in nature, but spending $10,000 to get this kind of information is tremendous. Because normally it would cost us close to how much to drill a well today, just to even
A test well is $28,000.
test well is 28,000. So in this case, we could have spent 28,000 times 3 to find out if we have water, and you could still drill, you know, a dry well. So now for $10,000, this is insurance to know where we need to be going. And I got to tell you, this is very, very smart to do. This, by the way, is the first time we've ever used this. But I would tell you, we would not do a well anywhere on raw land we're buying without pricing in this kind of money to go do it, take the soundings, and find out where our best chances are of getting the water. Any questions anybody has on this, or anybody who's ever done this or used it?
I have a question.
Yes,
I know that wells can go dry and groundwater levels could decrease and increase. How long are you able to estimate that they would have this level of water? How does it fluctuate? Do you see these numbers fluctuate a lot?
here's what I would tell you. Generally, the well drillers in your area, they're going to know the aquifer formations that you have that they're normally drilling into. And this is especially true in the Southwest. Now, can these amounts go down? Yes, they can. As an aquifer tends to drain, or you get into prolonged drought, there's every good chance that you can have something like that occur. However, if you can get to an area where your gallon per minute is higher, that means you've got more pressure there, which means your water source is likely to be one of the last to start to dry up. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
But there's no guarantee with that, and that is the situation with wells. But let me tell you, there are a lot of cities across the United States that use underground aquifers for their supplementing to their water systems. City of Austin, we have a big lake nearby, which is true with California as well, as Danielle can tell you. They use a lot of surface water for their water supplies to some of their major municipal areas. And we do that in Texas as well as the underground aquifers. I grew up in San Antonio, Texas. They take 100% of their water. This is an SMSA of about 2 million people. All of their water comes from underground, the Edwards Aquifer. So, and that's true out in West Texas. I imagine that is very true in Arizona, places like that where they're having to tap water that's underground. So anyhow, we want to
Go ahead, Joe.
go ahead, Richard.
No, I was just gonna say that every state has some sort of controlling entity. In Texas, they have a water development board, and then there's groundwater conservation districts, and there's all sorts of regulatory developments that are happening, and it's pretty key to be aware of some of those developments these days, and I'm sure California has this as well. Whereas historically in America, in just about every state, the landowner had dominant control of the water and the minerals, if you will, under their land. Particularly in water, those rights are being diminished, and you have to really, really pay attention to legislation. So when you're dealing with land and large landowners, you need to be aware of that. One of the key advantages from, again, thinking like a sales guy, to what Grant just mentioned on the water well, when you do find a well in Texas that is a glory well and you can get a bunch of water out of it, the Water Development Board limits the amount of water that can be extracted based on the acreage you have. So if the well is a high producing well, and let's just say it was 100 gallons per minute, and in our case, we had 250 acres, that 100 gallons a minute could not be extracted on 200 acres. We would have to work out joint service agreements with our neighbors. And it doesn't have to be contiguous neighbors. But by leveraging their land, then we can extract more water. And the only reason we would be interested in doing that is to increase the service area if we were trying to become more of a utility. But in the reality, if we were just trying to develop the 250 acres, it would at least allow us to extract what we need for a high density residential development. Hopefully
So
that makes
Richard,
sense.
is there some sort of equation that they use to say, okay, you have so many acres, you can only, given how this many acres, you can only pull this much water, that's why out of the aquifer, that's why you have to go make an agreement with neighboring parcels?
There is, but I don't know what that is, but I'm sure the Water Development Board does have that published.
Mm.
But yeah, it definitely is a formula. And we've been talking to our neighbors, along those lines. But what's interesting from a sales perspective, we would then hold the key, if you will, because I'm not required to give the one particular neighbor the rights to that water. If he wanted to try to drill and hit a well that do 100 gallons a minute, he's fully entitled to do that. I may decide to give the rights to another guy because either that guy wants to list with me or co-develop with me or whatever. So that's the beauty to the deal. But the reality of the matter is, as well as Graham mentioned, is that the way these limestone-based aquifers are in Texas is I could drill a well here and hit 100 gallons a minute, and I could be an eighth of a mile away or less and be down to 35 gallons a minute. So you never know exactly where you are with the pressure point and where you are in the aquifers. Now, the other thing to note, guys, too, the only reason Austin/Taylor, Texas landed the Samsung plant is the Samsung plant was able to tap into a previously untapped aquifer that the city of Taylor knew went through their town. It's a massive aquifer that goes from northeast Texas up near the border of Louisiana and Texas and comes all the way down to San Antonio, 600-700 miles. And that right now, that Samsung plant is the only tap in this area of that aquifer. And that's the only way Taylor got the semiconductor plant. So knowing your resources from a water standpoint is very, very, very key. Very smart economic development guy in Taylor that was able to pull that off.
Cool. So I'm going to preempt Richard a little bit because I see Danielle just thirsting for the knowledge for wastewater here. All right. So I got to go over here, right? Pull this up. No.
Go to the previous. Stop share.
Stop share. Okay. Go to previous. Grant, I'm gonna let you walk through this because you were there at the seminar and you met these guys. Guys, this is really exciting.
So we started a wastewater company. We ended up, we have a local fund that bought, I think we had 20 acres that we bought for all land. And very much like water availability has been difficult to catch up, the sewer utilities have had a difficult time catching up in terms of development and just the massive growth. And so what we've seen in Texas is a rise of package plants and investor-owned utilities and not just municipal utilities. Across the street from our property was the city of Round Rock, their whole sewage system, but they had no capacity, and they basically told us we can't serve you at all. So we had to go look for a solution, and what ended up happening is we formed a wastewater company, and we found a vendor, and this is who Reuse is, and they've got a product that they're using. It's called membrane bioreactor technology, and it's very similar almost to reverse osmosis technology, if you're familiar with that. It uses filtration to separate the solids. They've got a biological component to it, and then they've got a membrane component to it. And what you get is the in-quality effluent that comes out of this is up to US drinking water standard. They essentially have to add chlorine to this, and you've got drinking water, and then you're left with solids that they then compress into a cake, and they send that off to a landfill, and then you're left with the liquid, which is pure drinking water once they microdose it with this chlorine. I recently asked our engineer what the loss on this is, because I know many of you are familiar with reused wastewater for irrigation. Well, this takes it a step further, and their loss to the whole system is about 5% of water, which is incredible. We're going to be needing to utilize this as we get to, as we get more drought in heavily populated areas. It's almost going to be essential that we start getting developers on board with using this technology and building their water infrastructure with the ability to add this recycled water to your water grid, because this is huge. This is huge. It's almost, you prime the system, and then you're pulling very little water just to top up your entire development water system. What's really cool is if you look on the north plant here is what a traditional wastewater plant is. And I think they said this was a 250,000 gallons per day plant. Well, you look on the south side, this is how small their plant can be. And as the tech progresses, it's getting smaller and smaller. We've got a 1.5 million gallon, or let's say it's 1.4 million gallon per day plant that will fit on 2 acres. To give you an example of what the city of Liberty Hills large open air municipal plant that does 4 million gallons, it sits on 20 acres. So this is incredible technology. And the fact that they can get it, which the city of Liberty Hills plant cannot do, US drinking water standard, this is huge. So you've got the ability to either use that water to irrigate and sell, which your development clients can do, or they can add it to their system where you're in areas that are under a water crunch. What's cool about this tech, if you keep going, is that they can put this in a variety of buildings. So it does not have to be an open air facility, especially if you've got issues with the neighbors, you've got development standards that the city just won't allow, but it's like, okay, what if we put it in a building and these guys never know it exists? That's doable with this technology.
Yeah, here's what I told Grant. We're going to put one together and use this little green cottage, and we're going to put an apartment up on the top. We'll Airbnb the apartment on the top. and we're running all our wastewater down below, you know? I think what a great idea. I think
Yeah,
this is incredible technology though, guys. And let me explain something. So Richard and I put together an RV park down near the coast. Now we didn't build it because it was just before the pandemic and it didn't make sense to build it. But we got a package plan approved for the development and we were going to discharge into the bay, the Gulf, right there. So I get a call from a reporter in Victoria, and she goes, because the neighbors were a little upset that, you know, we were going to treat this water and then discharge it into the bay. And I asked her a question. I said, well, I can't remember her name, Rachel. Rachel, when you flush your toilet in Victoria, Texas, where do you think that goes? And she says, well, I guess it goes to a treatment plant. Right. And then where does that treatment plant discharge it to? Well, I guess the Colorado River. Right. Now, what I want to know is, where do you think your drinking water comes from in the city of Victoria? She says, well, the Colorado River. Right. How many cities upriver do you think discharge their wastewater into the Colorado River? Have you got a map there, Rachel? Let's look at that. And all of a sudden it started to dawn on her. I said, Rachel, you've been drinking this water for how old are you? 25? 25 years. It's treated wastewater. That's what you drink. Okay, now they treat the water when they take it in the intake and they make sure it's okay. But being able to reuse affluent has been around for a very, very long time. It's just nobody's seen it done this way, where you're building the plant that's able to take the wastewater in, fully treat it, take the solids out, take everything bad out of it, add a little chlorine to it, and you have drinking water. And the reason I'm excited about this is Grant and I went and visited with the city of Liberty Hill, and we've got these small towns all around Austin, Texas. Their hair's on fire because they've got to use water to be able to create wastewater plants. But if they could recycle the same water and only lose 5%, they're looking at this going, this is incredible. Now, by the way, they're already building these plants around the country. And I just wanted to share this with you guys today because I got to tell you, our perspective, normally when we get a wastewater package plan approved, and we've done that through the TCEQ here in Texas, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. These are discharge plants, or we treat the effluent and then we discharge into the environment. This is a way of being able to say we don't have to discharge it. We're going to recycle and use it back into the same subdivision. What neighbor next door to me is going to have a problem with that? Now, they may go, hey, I don't want to smell it. Well, there's ways to be able to handle that. And you're looking at it right here. You can build, because the pad is so much smaller, you can enclose these, which is exactly what they've done here. I just think this is really cool technology.
Grant, I'm sorry, is this something that you're doing or is this a company that you're working with?
This is something that we're doing right now. We're about to get our permit for this 1.4 million gallon plant. And this is a company that we are working with, that we've brought on. If you go to the next slide, the technology to be focused on is called direct potable reuse. And that is really what what I'm focused on pushing in the state of Texas. This is a new technology for us, but it is not necessarily a new technology. But these treatment plants, the smell is a lot minimized versus your traditional large regional municipal plants. You know, and every developer is different. Sometimes it comes down to a matter of economics. What's been great is that these have been getting cheaper and cheaper as the technology gets better and better. And it's going to be at a point where you're going to hit that juncture of the economics work and we need this. Many developers are always looking at the bottom line. So in the end, they're going to try and go with the cheapest option, which in Texas could mean a lesser quality of effluent. And that is not necessarily what this company can do. Many package plants, their effluent quality is high, but it is non-potable water, and it goes in the creek, just like we have. You know, we were talking about our examples on the Colorado River. Those large municipal plants are not necessarily able to do this, but the technology is slowly pushing them there. And newer plants that are being built, larger plants too, are starting to utilize this technology as they get better at, you know, creating a larger system for it. What's cool about this company and most companies that are doing membrane bioreactor MBR technology is that you can do a modular plant. So let's say you have your first phase of 200 homes or 400 homes, you can put in a functional plant and they can add the you know, we call it in Texas, it's living unit equivalents called LUEs. And that's about 250 gallons per residential home
Per day.
per day. Apartments are about half that. Townhomes are about 75% of that number. But you can add, let's say you're ready for your next phase, great. We can then phase in the next part of the plant without interrupting the flow of the current plant. And it's pretty cool technology that they're able to do that without having to shut down or have extended maintenance time where you're not able to provide service to your already partially built development.
I have another question. Is there kind of a break-even point where something like this makes sense to install, you know, from just a cost perspective, size perspective, whatever?
Sure, yeah. So for example, our property, we're actually going to serve a 800, it's about a 600 acre area, not just our 20 acres. Georgetown was the closest municipality that could serve us, and they were 5 miles away. And they had asked, I think their estimate was about a $16 million pipe. In addition to about 3 to 4 years of design and planning and purchasing of the easements to bring that pipe to us. I think our estimates on the plant are going to be, you know, 12 to 14 million, possibly more for a similar gallons per day of effluent. And the timing is everything. I mean, we can get this done. You know, we've got permitting in Texas, so it's going to take us about 12 to 18 months of permitting. But design and construction, design can be done during that time and construction within 6 months. So you're looking at close to a 24-month turnaround versus a 4 to 5 year turnaround. That makes sense when we can then just charge similar impact fees that Georgetown is charging and make that money back. There might even be a little bit of surplus to take care of any infrastructure needs as well.
Yeah, you get your money back, Danielle, by the tap fee that you then charge the builders around you. And so the plant, basically, you'll get the money back for having to build the plant, and actually you now own the utility. So it makes you money. You're now the utility owner.
That's one
Hey,
way
Joe.
you can do it.
Yes.
Go ahead, Danielle.
No, I was just gonna ask if they're only in Texas right now.
That's a great question. I meet with them on Monday and I will let you know, Danielle.
Okay, thank you.
My question was similar. I know Texas has provisions that allow private utility districts. But is that just unique to Texas? Are you aware? Is this something that can happen, that happens in all states, or is that just really exclusive to some states?
That happens in a lot of states, I tell you. I mean, I've done a lot of work in North Carolina. You can own them there. You can own them in Florida. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, the
key thing
cities.
is, the key thing is
Go
it's,
ahead, Ray.
yeah, it's, we are not, the way that they license in Texas, a public utility company can be a municipality or it can be other legal entities. So it's really more of how the well or wastewater plant is permitted, and then when it is, and who they serve, and then what operationally is the monitoring requirements. So the reason we were able to create a utility company is that we are going to use licensed operators that basically operate the utility. And then we'll have a separate legal entity that is doing the billing and collects the bills. And then we will have a cost sharing, profit sharing model built into the partnership that we are participating in. So all the expertise, if you will, is handled by third-party entities and is set up accordingly within the state and the regulatory agencies. And the good thing about that in Texas, and it probably varies, but I imagine it's similar, most of the licensing for all of this is handled at the state level. The city's jurisdiction comes in when they have a jurisdictional boundary that says they can or should provide the water or wastewater. If the financial modeling that the city provides is not cost effective, i.e. the model that Grant was saying, then a landowner has the right to procure water, wastewater in lieu of the city. In the model here, Georgetown was offering a $17 million solution. We have a 600-acre or larger service area, even though we're only owning 20 acres ourselves. And we're at 600 acres. I think our cost plan is, what is it, Grant? 10 million?
The
total built out?
12 to 14 right now.
Yeah, so we're well under the cost that the city of Georgetown was proposing. So the regulatory agency says, okay, it makes sense for you guys, both on the timing and the other. Georgetown really could not stand, if you will. Now, in this case, to be clear, we were also in a void where there wasn't really a wastewater provider officially anyway, but Georgetown did try to say, because they're in the ETJ, they had some grounds, but they were willing to release because of the financial model.
And a follow-up to
Well-
that, for a landowner who is looking for a utility district and they need to service themselves, where would you say they should start for a landowner that doesn't know how to get started?
I would,
Whoever
yeah, go ahead, Grant, go ahead.
Whoever's providing their current wastewater or water solution, that's who you'd reach out to. In Texas, we have what's called a CCN, which is essentially an area that you claim as a utility company, and it's a kind of a service area, so to speak. It's not their true service area, but it's an area that if you lie within the CCN, you have to contact that utility company and ask them if they can provide service. And if they cannot, they will give you a will not serve letter, which will allow you to be released from that CCN. And then you can go pursue your own solution. One of the issues that we had with the area we were in was we happened to be in the extraterritorial jurisdiction of Georgetown. Gave us a $16 million quote. They did not want to release us, and they would, if they had had their way, forced us to pay that $16 million to put that pipeline in. We were fortunate that the state legislator of Texas, and I had to testify for one of these bills to passed a bill that allowed us to release from the ETJ. So we basically told Georgetown to go stick it. And then we were able to pursue our own solution. But it just made economic sense. Why would we spend millions more and then wait, for years with carrying costs? That just doesn't work. We're looking for the fastest solution for our clients to then deliver the returns that they're expecting.
And I hope y'all understood what happened. The state legislature of Texas last summer basically passed a law that says if you're in a city's ETJ, but they cannot service you with water, wastewater, you have the right to petition to get out of their ETJ. So that's what we've done. On that track, we did that. In fact, we've done it on what, 6 or 7 tracks now, right?
Yeah.
And the reason that worked in Texas is if you were in a city's ETJ, they still had a lot of approval requirements that you had to meet, even though you were not in their city limits. So having that law put into place for us has been tremendous, tremendous.
The other thing to note too, is there are vendors on these package plans that can go as small as $250,000 package plans. You'll find these in particular in West Texas, in the oil patch where the local regulations were, because they're packages, they literally plant these while they're doing wildcatting. And then after the wells and everything's put in, and there's no one working there, they pick those up and bring them to the next job site. You can even buy used package plants and retrofit them with the biotics and all that stuff. So the person that was asking about an individual, I tell you, on the small landowner that was trying to do something just to service their land, you can do that. So we got one permitted that was only 10,000 gallons a day, believe it or not. So, and that was
Yeah, so
right
they
at
can get down pretty small.
yeah,
Yeah.
$180,000 to build that.
Thank you.
All right, well, guys, any more questions? Because we're running over. Any other questions?
Yes, will you
Okay.
be doing a course, Joe? The same way the other product division leaders, they've done like a training course for development. Will you be putting one together for the development division?
Let me tell you what's been going through my head. Honestly, I don't mind y'all's feedback. There's so much aspects to the development business. I honestly think if we did a 6-hour course and maybe did it twice a year and flew all you guys into Austin and we do it in Austin, take a full day, bring the speakers in, maybe a day and a half, bring the speakers in, we bring the wastewater guys in, water guys, blah, blah, blah. We spend 5 hours going through the processes, going through the spreadsheets. You with me? In my head, I think that's how you do that. Because I can't do this on a Zoom. But if I can get 30 people in the room, 40 people in the room, which I think we could, 50, then you could assemble it like that, and we can bring everybody in and get it put together and done. Then you're going to get some real value out of it. That's almost like a ULI course.
I'd fly in.
Give me feedback, guys. What do you think about that idea?
I think it would be
Depending
amazing.
on the price of the course, I'd fly. I like it.
Well, yeah, I'm not trying to make money off the course. I mean, for me, if we can break even at whatever, bring some sponsors in, which I think we could do. Because to do it, you're going to have 2 nights in a hotel. You're going to have to fly in, fly out. Well, right there, there's a couple $1,000 right there by the time you get that done. And if I could just cover the cost of the course, well, most of the instructors I know would probably just come in to spend the time to go through it, But I think you can probably put a course on like that for what, $500, something like that. Just guessing. I don't know. And the truth is, I don't have to do it in Austin. I could do it somewhere in the middle of the country. I could do it in Dallas. which frankly is easier to drive in and out. The only problem is you'd need to do it at one of the Dallas offices where we could use their training facility. But in Dallas, you have big enough training facilities, you could do that.
Are the other product divisions, are they charging for the course, or they're just saying they're gonna?
They're
What
they're
kind of model?
charging, Richard, and are those guys doing them via Zoom? Is that what Barry and all the guys are doing? Bruce?
I don't
I don't
know.
know.
I don't
I don't
know,
know.
but
I believe so.
Okay. Because I mean, my comment about the development business, I need y'all there so I can bring up case studies. You with me? Danielle, bring one of hers in. We certainly have tons of them. Have Grant come in, speak for an hour on here's what we know about water. Here's what we know about wastewater. Here's the spreadsheets you'd use for development. But to really get this done, I would love to have 40 of you in the room because it's as much a mastermind as it is a learning experience. And I'm not interested in trying to do this on a Zoom. I just don't think that works worth a damn. Sorry, it's just me. But if everybody came in and everybody who's interested in trying to do this development, and look, you could spend 3 hours talking about how you assemble your own joint venture. Those of you that know me, I'm big on trying to educate everybody about that. I mean, we did a presentation at the Greenbrier and everybody came up to me and said, oh my God, this is great. You know, can we do this again? So to me, if the cost of the course is $500, it's going to cost you $2,000, hotel flight, come in. That's probably the best $2,500 you can invest anywhere. Gut feel. So let me look into that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because I think, and the key to doing events like that is you need the date way ahead of time. You with me? So everybody knows. So maybe what we do is we do the first one and everybody come in and we beta test it. And then after that, we could probably do it twice a year type thing. Sometime in the spring, sometime in the fall.
Yeah, the other thing, the reality of guys too is Urban Land Institute and CCIM both have some intro to development courses, and those, are a couple $100. And I would almost say that a prerequisite is to go through those and get comfortable with those, and then yeah, if we had an 8-hour or 12-hour deal that was over 2 days or something, I think that would be great. The other advantage is that I think it's really, really important that we do lost my thought, that we network ourselves among ourselves, because the ability of having people in the same group, if you will, same company, that are all of the similar mindset is just powerful. So
yeah, I mean, the whole deal, the KW is community anyway, and that's just the nature of the commercial beast. It's like Danielle said, and she's correct. How do you go learn this? Well, you almost have to do it by being involved in it. It's like I tell people, how do you get to a big development? Start with a small one. Because it's all the same requirements on a 5-acre deal that it is on a 100-acre deal. But that's how you learn. And if you make mistakes, they're little mistakes. Later, when you get into big stuff, totally different deal. So, hey guys, we're going to let you run. Thanks. I hope this was helpful. Danielle, thank you so much. And I think we'll do it again end of June, and we'll probably maybe take a break in July, let everybody go have a nice vacation. I'm going to be in Africa shooting things or using the camera, one or the other. So you guys have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
bye-bye.